Welcome back for another episode of Fangirl Football. It's just me and Quinten tonight as Judy is on vacation. But let's jump right into some DFS fun. How's that sound? So let's first kick off with week 10 and how we did for week 10. All the scores seemed pretty low for the winners this time. I say them in the 150s and 160s. I thought we said that they're usually in like 220s to 250s.
Yeah, you normally see around 200. It's that same trend where we're barely having any of these receivers hit their high-end outcome. We're seeing dominant running back play this season and kind of a consistent trend. Very few receivers hitting the numbers.
I think that kind of sets us up to talk about how we did last week because the winning lineup had Bijan, Robinson, and the receivers we don't see as much on the winning lineup either.
Yeah, we took a little bit of a bargain. We kind of got those middle running backs, and Minnesota just did not get it done. So Aaron Jones did not come through with that price. And same thing with Chicago. We thought they'd look a lot better and at least have some offense, and it was so bad they fired their offensive coordinator. But as you can see in the winning lineup, the only receiver you were truly happy with on the slate was Calvin Ridley.
Which is on the Titans, and everyone's been like, oh, avoid the Titans.
Yeah, 2 straight good weeks without Hopkins there, so that's going to be something to monitor. But besides that, it was really just the discounts that kind of got them the savings there. So Jawan Jennings and Adonai Mitchell did enough to basically afford their price so they could pay up for Bijan and really the 49ers. So Brock Purdy and Kittle came through. Herbert was a good discount for us. Our true mistake was we played Cooper. We didn't get that swap in with that late injury news. So there, and then a couple other bad breaks. So Taysom Hill had about an 80-yard touchdown that was called back on a penalty. That would have really helped our lineup.
As a Falcons fan, I was happy it was called back, but having him on the lineup, it was hard to see.
Yes, that was a hit or miss. This was one of those weeks, as you can see from the defense. It really did matter what defense you play. We went with a cheaper option in Arizona and took a risk there, and there are only 4 points lower than the winning lineup's defense with the Patriots at 16. So defense did not really play a heavy role. It was more just those couple pieces. So Brock Purdy, Bijan, and Calvin Ridley. If you had those 3, you did well last week. Other than that, kind of a lower scoring.
Let's jump into this week, week 11. So we do have four teams on bye, so a couple fewer games this week. The Cardinals, Panthers, Giants, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are all on bye. I'm sure the Buccaneers are very happy to finally have their bye week with all their injuries and what's going on over there. The other thing I noticed about this week is there's no games with an over-under greater than 50. Like our highest one is 48.
It is weird. There's also not a lot of competitive games in this. There's a lot of heavy point spreads, which we'll dive into, but I think that's going to kind of shape the way we build our lineups.
Yeah. Let's start with Baltimore at Pittsburgh, which is projected with an over-under of 48. Baltimore's favored by 3. What are you thinking here?
Let's do it. So my initial impression when I looked at this is I was immediately circling the Steelers. Russell Wilson and George Pickens have had great chemistry since being on the field together, and Pickens has really just been very consistent, which is something that really wasn't his MO. I do think they're going to have to throw a lot to stay in this game. But then thinking about it a little bit more, I was like, why am I just ignoring Baltimore? If we're thinking the whole reason why Pickens would be good is because they have to pass to stay in this game, that means they're keeping up with someone. So who from the Ravens side is going to be able to actually keep that pressure on? In my play for this matchup would really be Zay Flowers. It's just been a couple dud games from him, but other than that, recently he's been on fire and he's been very explosive, over 100 yards multiple times in the last few weeks. So he's had those off games and he's pretty inconsistent, but I don't think he's really going to get, I think he's going to get kind of overlooked. People are going to like the Pickens side. So being able to have that kind of similar price point, but going on the other side, we really only think Pickens is going to do great because the Steelers have to keep up with the Ravens. And I think Zay Flowers is going to be the one setting the pace.
Would you stack this game?
You can. I think Jackson's always a little bit more risky to stack with because he has such rushing potential that it kind of takes away from some of the receiving, but he's really been airing it out recently. So you can get away with like a Jackson, Zay Flowers, Andrew stack if you want to go fully in, and then Pickens as a bringback. It's pretty clean, but you really have to go cheap on your other plays. So personally, I like the other games better. The options for the Ravens are so expensive that it's just pretty difficult to build a full stack.
I hadn't seen that Jackson had that questionable tag.
Yeah, that's something new. He might have missed Wednesday's practice, but it's not something I'm really worried about for him playing. I think it might just be kind of that day of rest. He often kind of misses those Wednesday practices, recovering from the game. So,
well, let's move on to our next game. Cincinnati at the LA Chargers.
Yes, and this is the Sunday night game. Got flexed, and so we don't have to have a primetime Colts-Jets game, much to my dismay. But the Chargers as the slight favorite in this one. Who do you like taking this one?
I have to admit, I think I'm on more of the Chargers side than Cincinnati side personally.
I think the Chargers are the better value here. Herbert can get it done. The Bengals defense is atrocious. So if you want to go into those deep shots with Quentin Johnston, this is a great matchup for him. The Bengals, the one thing they have done is kind of stop the run. So I'm kind of out on Dobbins or Gus Edwards. But really looking at those receivers, and I kind of like the outside receivers, mostly with Quentin Johnston. But Chase, so expensive. And it's hard to justify that against a good Chargers defense.
Why Johnston over McConkey?
I think it's really just the matchup. So the outside corners and really how Cincinnati's been beaten time and time again this season has been those deep passes, which is kind of Quentin Johnston's MO. Him or Palmer are both options. We saw a nice flea flicker to Palmer last week, but other than that, it's McConkey's more the possession receiver and kind of get that first down, which I think they're going to be taking some deep shots here.
Do you think they're going to be playing from behind, trying to catch up?
No, I think they're going to try to exert their will. They're going to try to rush Dobbins up the middle and then do the play action passes deep to Johnston or Palmer. But Cincinnati's going to make it a game. I think it'll be interesting, but I see this one more like a 24-21 where this probably isn't the game where you need the pieces from for daily fantasy.
Well, let's move on to the next one. Seattle is headed to San Francisco, where San Francisco is favored by 6.5 and the over-under is 47.5. As a Seahawks fan, I'm not super excited to see Seattle's favored by that much. It does look like the DK Metcalf's going to be back for this game.
Yeah, I think he will be healthy. So that'll be great to see that Seahawks offense that finally healthy again. They were rolling when they were all healthy at the beginning of the season. So the media play that kind of stood out to me was Ken Walker. He's cheaper than we've seen him in the past, and he was destroying some of those defenses early in the season. So I think it might open up for him. The one thing I wanted to point out was I cannot believe we're already having to pay almost $10,000 for CMC.
It's his second week, and
second week back, he did okay last game. I mean, he didn't get a touchdown against Tampa Bay, but he was heavily involved. But FanDuel's already pricing him at his peak, so I don't think I'm going to have too much CMC. Some of the other options, I think going back to Debo is fine, but really I prefer to just have Debo and Ken Walker on the side and kind of get it.
Do you think CMC is also going to be chalky?
I don't think he'll be too chalky. 10,000 is a steep price to pay, and unless you're willing to punt at multiple positions and kind of go to the cheapest options that you can find in other places, I just don't think CMC is going to be worth it. So I don't think you'll see him in a lot of lineups, which always makes him interesting for like those dart throws on tournaments to kind of get different. I mean, you have one of the best running backs in the league. So something fun to play around with, but not going to be heavily involved in my lineup.
Do you like any other receivers here on either side?
I think Jennings is still undervalued. We saw him pop up in the winning lineup, I think a couple times this year. And just really, he's not respected. And he's playing the Brandon Ayuk role I think if he had the Brandon Ayuk name tag there, his price tag would probably be 2,000 more. But so if you can get a discount on him still, then feel free to plug him into your lineup and feel pretty safe with the work he's going to get.
Well, continuing on, let's chat Jacksonville at Detroit, where Detroit is favored by 14 and the over-under is 47.5. And part of me wonders if Detroit is going to score 40 out of that 47.
Yeah, I mean, the implied line is over 30, so a 14-point spread is crazy. Typically, that means that at least Vegas thinks that they're going to be able to do whatever they want, and it's tough to think really
Well, and
otherwise.
Detroit has run up the score. I know Judy at times is like, oh, well, they won't run up the score. It's going to be a one-sided game. But we've seen Detroit use this season as kind of a revenge season against all the years they haven't had this kind of year and have those 51-point games.
Yeah, Detroit's going to play their offense 60 minutes and try to put up video game numbers on them. So I think they can do whatever they want. It's what game plan do they go with? So it's more reading this matchup like, I mean, Jacksonville's a bad passing defense and one of the worst rushing defense. So it's kind of pick your poison. My lean, purely just kind of vibes, is I think the coaching staff loves rewarding their players and loves kind of building up their guys. With Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions in that last game, I think this is his get-right game. And I'm willing to fully get in on the Lions here. Do it Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamison Williams. You got the Laporta injury that kind of clarifies it up too. So I think that's a fun way to go. And just fully believe in this and try to root for Detroit to put up 40. The other way, I think if you don't believe in this game, if you think it's kind of like the Minnesota-Jacksonville, we kind of thought Minnesota would do whatever they want against Jacksonville last week. I think you can just go Montgomery, be safe. You're probably going to get 80, 90 yards on the ground and probably a touchdown, and then just pay up elsewhere. So those are the two ways I like to play this game. I don't care for anyone on Jacksonville. I really just don't see them being worth it. But either fully in on the Lions or Montgomery.
Any thoughts on why what happened last week happened with Goff with the 5 interceptions? And what might be different about this game where we're not going to see that?
Houston's a good defense. Also, watching that game, a couple of them were his fault, but he had some weird ones too. He had a couple tipped ones and one that looked more like a fumble. So it said, the stat sheet said 5 interceptions, and I think everyone on social media was like going in on Goff and saying he wasn't a good quarterback. So I think the Lions kind of see that. And I think Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, is like, all right, let's dial him up and get him a few this week.
I could go all in on the Lions this week too. We'll come back to that though, and continue on with Kansas City over at Buffalo. Buffalo's favored by 2. Over-under is 46.5. Are we actually going to finally see Kansas City lose?
How many times have we seen a 9-0 team be an underdog? I'm sure that's got to be one of the first, but I love this game as an NFL fan. I think I hate this game as a daily fantasy player point of view.
Just because everyone's expensive, or?
They are. And we've got 2 great defenses in this matchup. The only real weakness that stands out as far as like the defenses involved is Buffalo's rushing game. But Kansas City is activating Isaiah Pacheco off of IR. So he should be getting back into this game, I believe. Something to monitor that he's not active for this game and it's all Kareem Hunt. But if they're sharing workload at all, then I'm kind of completely out.
And Pacheco was a broken bone injury. Yeah, he broke his leg.
And he runs angry, and they need him for the playoffs. So I don't think he's going to get a lot of use. I'm not touching him if they do activate him. I think it more just makes Kareem Hunt not an option. And then Buffalo's a little banged up on the receivers too. So they already ruled Coleman out. And then Cooper is still trying to get back on the field after missing last week.
Yeah, I think after last week, we might just avoid Cooper. Avoid a lot of questionable ones.
Yeah, I think he's bad luck. And yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy watching this game. I'm going to be rooting for Buffalo. But other than that, I don't think I'm going to have any players I'm rooting for in this game.
Let's continue on to maybe a similarly competitive game of Cleveland at New Orleans. They have very similar standings or scores so far this year. New Orleans is only favored by 1, and the over-under is 44.5. So we're already below that 45 mark, and we still have several games to go.
Yeah, this is on the opposite end of maybe the losers in a better position of this game for a better draft pick. But I think the New Orleans defense at home against Jameis Winston loves his turnovers. And New Orleans looked a lot better after firing their coach. I think they were happy to get him out of the locker room. So you can go that way. I've got a couple other defenses I have circled, but the New Orleans defense and then Cedric Tillman, I think, is a pretty good value for, especially on DraftKings. He's a little underpriced on DraftKings, but you can go with him on either.
Is Taysom Hill worth it this week?
Yeah, the question for the Saints is always going to be, can Kamara and Taysom Hill get enough work for their price? Because they just don't have anyone else left healthy on this offense. I don't think so. I mean, we're seeing Kamara at 8,200, and then Taysom Hill's honestly one of the more expensive tight ends on this slate at 6,400. So personally, I'm getting away from them and going to better matchups.
Well, let's continue on to another matchup then of Las Vegas at Miami. Miami's looking a little better with Tua back. Miami's favored here by 7. So a full touchdown. It is at Miami. Over-under is 44.
Miami got the win on Monday night against the Rams, but they still looked out of it on offense. I think this is their get-right game. We've kind of talked about it throughout the weeks, but Miami circles those bad teams and loves to run it up. We saw them put up that 70-point game. We saw them put up multiple 40-point games last year, but I think this is their circled matchup. And the Miami side and Detroit are kind of the teams I'm targeting to go
for similar reasons too, it sounds like.
This week. Yeah, the heaviest spreads, and I think they're worth their spreads. I honestly would take both of them to cover. And the Hill wrist injury kind of scares me, and Hill just has not done a lot. So I think I'd prefer Waddle if I'm going to go with the receiver, but Achane is kind of my lock. I don't think I'm going to have a lineup without Achane in it, and he is either going to make or break me this week because, man, that Raiders running back matchup is just so juicy. So to read you off a couple of the past running back performances against the Raiders, we had Chase Brown, 157 yards and a touchdown. Kareem Hunt, 70 and a touchdown. Najee, 122 and a touchdown. Javonte, 111. We had the one off week with Jerome Ford with only 70 yards. And then it was Chuba Hubbard with 169 yards and a touchdown. And then this is against one of the best receiving backs in the game. I don't know how I'm having a lineup without Achane. I think even if you want to get sneaky, throw Mostert in there, throw Jalen Wright, their rookie running back that they've been trying to get involved, and take your shots. We've seen some games in the past where both Mostert and Achane were good together, so you can even play both in the same game.
Since we're on FanDuel, we're always looking for a running back for our flex. So Wright might be a good option to both save, but still get that running back in.
And really, Jalen Wright, I think he had one of the fastest 40 times in the combine this year. He hasn't had that breakaway play yet, but it's coming.
This might be the game where it happens.
Yeah. And this is a 3-win team that's still trying to make the playoffs, so they're going to be incentivized to keep all their starters in there and make sure they get this win.
Let's continue on to Atlanta at Denver. Denver is favored by 2.5. Over-under is 44. The Atlanta game last weekend was a little bit heartbreaking. What do you think they're going to do this week?
It was a little sad. Atlanta's offense has been very hit or miss, and I just don't think the offense is clear enough to pay and buy one of these players against a good Denver defense on the road. So the question for me comes on more on the Denver side. Do I think any of them? Bo Nix has been kind of a surprise this year. He's been great for his value almost every single week for the past 4 weeks. And he's cheap enough that he's not really going to kill you. His price is starting to creep up. He's up at 74, so not the value he was a few weeks ago. But the one that kind of stands out to me is Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton has been great recently, and he's still less than 7K. I think he's a great option. There's about 3 receivers all sitting at the same price tag, and Courtland Sutton is one of those options. He's right next to Jameson Williams, and I will be having some lineups with Sutton in them and kind of get some exposure. But other than that, I think a good Denver defense at home keeps this a lower scoring game. And my only other thought on this is Audric Estime got the lead back responsibilities last week, and his price didn't really get updated. So he's still one of the cheapest running backs, and I think he's probably the cheapest running back that we're going to see is getting starting workload.
And we've seen teams be able to run against Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. Kamara had a pretty good game last week, and they are trying to get that young running back involved, and Javonte kind of got more of a bench role. I don't think they have the superstar that they can just consistently go to regardless of the matchup. They kind of rely on having solid overall pieces throughout their offense. And a couple injuries might deep.
I will say we have seen people run against Denver, and I wonder, is Robinson worth it or too expensive?
I think he's too expensive. He had a great game last week. I think this is off week. He's kind of on that even odd matchup, so this isn't his week. Look forward to who he's playing.
Well, let's go on to Indy at the New York Jets. New York Jets are favored by 4. Over-under is 43.5.
My heart and my mind are telling me two different things in this game. My heart's telling me that I get Richardson a backup price because he was announced the starter during the week. And so I get a quarterback with rushing upside at 6,400 that I think the coordinator will try to spotlight his talents, being the back and the shadow of Joe Flacco. So I probably will have some lottery tickets and some interesting lineups with Richardson in there. For a more dependable play, I can't go with him. He's been so inconsistent as a starter, but he's fun. And I think as a Colts fan, I'm excited to watch him rather than Joe Flacco. But for actual plays here, I think Breece Hall, Colts have not been able to tackle anyone, and Breece is still an explosive running back. He hasn't really had those great games that we've been expecting from him, but could be a get right. I will probably mostly just stay away from this game or build a Colts stack with Breece Hall if I want my lottery ticket.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm not really gravitating towards anyone in this game. I know the over-under is 43.5, and I would go on the underside personally.
I think if you do want to play the Colts side of the ball, do it over on DraftKings. Even better discount for Richardson. But other than that, in my FanDuel lineups, going to be staying away.
Let's continue on to the LA Rams at the Patriots. LA Rams are favored by 4.5, and the over-under is 43.
So we can see the top three, the Rams' go-to offense, highlighting the board right there with Kyron Cooper, Cooper Kupp, and Puka. Out of those three, Kupp would be my play. I think the one strength of the New England defense is Christian Gonzalez, their talented cornerback, and I think he'll primarily be lined up against Puka. It's really just of those two receivers who has the better matchup for me. So I lean Kupp. For them, we finally saw Kyron have a week without a touchdown, so maybe he has 2 to make up for it this week.
But that's a pretty high salary at 9,200 for maybe he gets 2 touchdowns, maybe he gets 0.
Yeah. So I haven't been having Kyron just because I I tend to pay up for Achane, and it's hard to ever afford both. I like Cup as a option. And then as far as like a pretty solid value option, I think you're going to see a ton of work for DeMar Douglas. He's been their number one receiver. He's been very consistent. And Drake May's top target. So I like him, and I even like Hunter Henry. They're a lot cheaper. I think you're saving a couple thousand compared to the LA options. And I think they'll kind of go hand in hand.
How has the Rams defense been this year?
It's been pretty bad. They've got good pass rush, and that's kind of a weakness of the New England offensive line. So we probably will see a good amount of sacks coming from that Rams defense, but their linebackers are great in coverage, which kind of opens it up for Hunter Henry.
Should we continue on to talk about the Packers at Chicago?
I think I just have a betting take for this one. I'm probably taking an alt line of under 34 points, and I don't think I'm interested in this. I think Chicago has to look better on offense because they can't possibly look worse, but I think this game is ugly. I think the Packers probably come out on top, and maybe Chicago realizes it wasn't just their offensive coordinator and lets go of their...
I was about to ask if you thought that the coaching change was going to make any difference this week.
I have always kind of disliked Waldron. I don't think he should have been brought in for the job, so I think it will get better, and they'll probably try to take some deep shots. The reports where the players were actually coming to the coaches saying that they didn't want Waldron calling plays and they wanted to be more aggressive play calling. So it wouldn't surprise me if they take a couple more deep shots to DJ Moore. But Green Bay has a pretty good defense, and I don't think it's magically fixed over.
Is the Green Bay defense expensive?
I think they're kind of middle of the road.
Might be a defense worth grabbing depending on what we're trying to spend there.
Yeah, Caleb Williams loves taking sacks and holding on to that ball. So.
It's been unfortunate. It's caused me to need to look for new quarterbacks in my fantasy league. And finally, so we have one last game to chat about. Minnesota at Tennessee. If you had asked me before last week what I thought would happen in the Minnesota at Tennessee, I'd probably say, similar to my beliefs before last week, that Minnesota would just have a great game and run up the score. I don't know what happened last weekend.
Yeah. I don't know. Are we starting to see the wheels fall off of the Darnold wagon?
I hope not.
He looked pretty rough last game. And I think they're still a good team. I think their coach, Kevin O'Connell, will have them looking better. But Justin Jefferson's still one of the most expensive options on the slate. And Tennessee has kind of been hit or miss on defense recently, but I think at home they'll kind of show up, and this will be a tight game. But really, I'm just interested in the defenses. I think Darnold and Levis might have a competition to see who can throw more interceptions, and I'd kind of like the Tennessee defense because they're cheaper and they're at home. But I don't think I'm going to be following on the Calvin Ridley trend, unfortunately.
Well, let's actually build this lineup now that we've chatted through all the games. I think did you want to jump in with that the Jacksonville-Detroit, and do an all-in on the Detroit game?
I was thinking I'd kind of present you 3 different storylines, and you let me know which way you kind of want to build. So I think storyline 1 would be we see a C North Classic, and Baltimore and Pittsburgh go blow for blow, and they run up the score. The other 2 storylines are kind of the ones we get into on the Detroit side of the ball, and they just crush. Or Miami runs up the score against the Raiders at home. And both Detroit and Miami are at home. Weather won't be an issue with Dome and then playing Miami. So which of those 3 storylines kind of do you gravitate to? Do you think we should build our lineup around?
I'm gravitating towards the Miami or Detroit, but because we didn't talk about it, let's do the Baltimore at Pittsburgh.
All right, let's jump
Especially
in there.
Since so many parts were so expensive, I had kind of written off a lot of this to start.
Yeah, I think this will be an interesting way to build. partly because we do have to get cheaper. So I think if we're going to go all in, I don't know if we can afford Jackson in the full stacks, but I think the key pieces of Wilson, Flowers, and Pickens, if we're thinking it's going to be a shootout, all will need to be heavily involved.
So you want to grab Wilson. So that's why we're doing this stack while Judy's gone.
Yes. Hide in a Russell Wilson stack.
Wilson and Pickens is what you said. And then who did we want to grab from the...
I would say Zay Flowers from the Ravens, but we could go Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry almost always shows up in wins. So if we think the Ravens are actually going to come out on top, then let's go Henry.
Let's go Henry.
All right. So now I kind of think we save some of our running back options and try to tackle on the other ones. I think this one, because we are going into the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, I think there's still got to be valuable pieces. So maybe we go pick up our favorite piece from the Detroit side and from the Miami side and just say they're going to get the work. They're going to be who you need in this game and not the rest of the players.
I like that. On the Detroit side, they're also expensive.
They are expensive. I think probably the best value might be either Jameson Williams or getting Montgomery and just thinking that they're going to pressure with Montgomery the entire game.
Are we going to be able to afford Montgomery? We could try.
We can always, we'll slot him in and we'll see. So we're going to have to go cheap on the receivers.
Do you like A-Chain?
And I do think they're pretty... I like A-Chan. He is a little bit more expensive. So I would go him. And then maybe we go cheap and grab Jameson Williams for the Detroit wide receiver.
Okay, so we're at the point where we have Wilson for a quarterback, Higgins for one of our wide receivers, and Henry for a running back. And that was our Baltimore-Pittsburgh stack. And now we're grabbing Achan for our second running back and Williams for our second wide receiver. So we need another wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense now.
All right. I think we're really going to have to save some money. And I do have another play for us, kind of fully going in to the Russell Wilson stack. Mike Williams is so cheap. He is, I think he's at like 4,100.
What are you talking about? I see him right here for 5,700.
57. I think he's 4,100 over at DraftKings, but still a great value. And he did get a touchdown in his first game with Pittsburgh, and I kind of like him for a cheaper option, but we can keep him in our back pocket too.
Why would we want two wide receivers from the same team? I feel like one would still work from the other.
Well, typically, if we think Russell Wilson is actually going to be the quarterback we need, then he's a true pocket passer. He does scramble like here and there, and maybe he can get like 20, 30 yards on the ground, but he's going to need to probably have like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So then there should be more than enough for both George Pickens and Mike Williams.
Okay.
Kind of what we've seen with classic like Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I think Freiermuth just hasn't really been worked in too much. But for, let's see, if we're looking at tight end, the place that's kind of been tempting me is going either Will Disley or Dawson Knox. They're both cheaper options. And Dawson Knox is at 5,100. He's one of Josh Allen's favorite red zone targets, and there's probably no...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I don't think Dalton Kincaid's playing this weekend.
So I think he might be a free square. He's had good games in the past. And Chiefs pretty bad against opposing tight ends.
That's interesting for them being so known for Kelsey, that they're bad against that role. I feel like they'd have the perfect person to train against.
They somehow can't practice against it.
So now we still got a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense. Should we go to defense and just try to save real quick, pick up something super cheap?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to start at the bottom here.
Well, I'd say we don't go with the Raiders or the Jaguars.
Yes, I agree. I think probably the cheapest option we might be able to get away with is, I kind of like Tennessee. Tennessee at home against Darnold, who's been turning it over.
Is Darnold going to have 2 bad weekends in a row?
I think he can. I mean, he had like 3 bad seasons in a row, so I think he can do a couple games.
Oh.
All right, so how much money do we got left for these final 2 positions?
$58.50. We got $11,700 left. So go find our wide receiver.
Yeah, let's go get some bargain wide receivers. I do think Juwan Jennings is interesting. We've been talking about that he's just too cheap for his role in that offense. He's at 6,200. And then we're going to have to do a true pump play.
What about Quinten Johnston?
Yeah.
Save 200.
He can definitely take the top off that Cincinnati defense, and let's save a little bit of money
that we could then keep for our running back that we want. So we have 5,700 remaining. Too far. Oh, and it's... what about Estime?
We do have Estime. And yeah, we could say he gets all the workload and they kind of bully Atlanta.
So we actually have 300 left if we want to spend up for anything. Because currently we have Wilson for quarterback, Henry for running back, Achane for running back, Pickens for wide receiver, Jameson Williams for wide receiver, Quinten Johnston for wide receiver, Dawson Knox for our tight end, Audric Estime for our flex, and then the Titans for our defense.
If you go to flex, I'm curious if there are any other wide receiver, like any other options that just have high potential for a tournament that like maybe are some of the options that people can switch on to if they don't want to go Estime.
I'll take Estime out for a second so it's nice and highlighted.
So you do have Williams, you do have some high upside with Christian Watson or Ray McLeod if there's the injury, the Achilles injury to Mooney. So those are plays, but I think I would just go with the workload that Estime is going to see. And kind of lean on him.
Especially in this matchup. I think I'm going to enter. Yay!
And that one would be fun because I think people are going to lean very heavily into the Miami and Detroit sides of the ball. So doing something different, choosing a different game will definitely get you in the lower owned players and have some high potential.
This should be a good week.
I do hope one of our storylines comes true and people can take those advice and hopefully make some money off of it.
I hope so too. I want Miami to have a good week. They're due. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. Thanks for tuning in. We have our free contest up and running this weekend, so we'd love to have you join and make your own picks. Let us know what you think we got wrong here or got right with in the comments, and check out the description for those links. See you next time and enjoy Sunday.